Good afternoon, everybody. We are live, or at least I would hope so at this point, for the ZOZO Championship, the Pga Dfs First Look Show. I'm the host for it, Jason Rouslin, and I am joined each and every week with Geoff Ulrich. And Geoff, what's happening, man? We were just talking really briefly before we got on. We've got Xander Schauffele just flying up the odds boards, man. I mean, what's going on? He's now lower than both Rory McIlroy and Justin Thomas to win the golf tournament. Salaries haven't quite come out for the ZOZO, but how was your week, man? I had another bridesmaid. I can't believe it that Jason Kokrak and Martin Laird are in between me and Matt Wolf and Xander Schauffele tickets.
Yeah.
But that's the world we're living in right now.
Yeah, I mean, I added Russell Hanley like for just for an outright betting. Basically, I think it was in the first round, actually. I had a little bit on him pre-event just because
I did see that on Twitter, yeah.
Because I always splurge a little bit on Russ when he's long. I just can't resist that. And look, tee to green, I mean, he's just grading out so well right now. So when I saw him start well, I bumped it up to like a full unit kind of bet. I don't know, man. I don't want to say I wasn't expecting him to close because I think I actually kind of half was this time with a 3-shot lead. But like, what are you going to do when Jason Kokrak gains 4 strokes putting every round of the last 3 rounds? It's insane. So shout out to him, man. I mean, like, he's been on the verge before, so I mean, he deserved to win, I guess. But like you said, it's frustrating. Obviously you're on Schauffele, and the more I look at it, I'm kind of mad that I went with Rory over Schauffele last week because I feel like Schauffele, if you really look at the form, was probably closer. But yeah, that's got to hurt too. I mean, I was a little bit surprised when he dropped back in the 3rd round, but yeah. It's done. You're right. It's like 2 or 3 weeks in a row here, man. We're getting bit by guys, just coming out of nowhere, the woodwork, and just lighting it up with their putters. But that happens, man. That's the thing. I feel like we went through a stretch with golf betting, and I profit off this too, where the guys, the mid-tier guys, we all kind of expected to win. They closed it out, but you're getting a good taste of the variance in golf betting because this will happen, man. Where guys will just show up and they'll just have the week of their life with their putter, and kind of out of nowhere. So it is what it is. It's starting to get frustrating for me too, but
yeah, here's one thing that I'll say, and maybe a tad bit of an oversight by my part, or maybe not as deep of a digging as I should have been, or maybe this is just golf variance playing through. But Jason Kokrak, I have here on our first topic, Jason Kokrak and MGM. Okay, we knew he was a sponsor of MGM. We knew he was an ambassador. But where I didn't connect the dots was that he loves going to Vegas, and that he's their ambassador. So anytime they have any big profile clients, he's the one playing with them at Shadow Creek. So, should I say course history matters? Well, there's never been a golf tournament here, but in terms of who had seen the golf course the most, Jason Kokrak by far in the field had seen Shadow Creek the most out of any pro. And look, he's sitting atop the title now, 1.6 million or whatever it was, richer. And certainly he'll take that right to the blackjack tables, or a portion of it. But, I mean, that type of information is certainly, I think, maybe it's not quantifiable, but it's certainly qualifiable.
Yeah, absolutely. It is qualifiable. Exactly. I mean, it's just interesting, too. You saw this week, I mean, it seemed like players had trouble figuring out these greens a bit. And the players who did, like Hanley, Schauffele, and Kokrak, those are the guys who really made it. Like, I know distance was kind of big here, but with the par 5s, it didn't even actually seem to matter that as much as I thought it would. So it did kind of come down to who just figured out these greens the most. And it was Kokrak, man. I mean, Henley was up there too, and Schauffele, but those guys had really good weeks around the green. So I definitely think that played a part in it. He definitely obviously had more course history than I think a lot of people in the field. So interesting note. I saw that, and yeah, I kind of put 2 together too late as well. But, just an interesting tidbit. Like you said, it was a different course, first time there and everything. So I think those things matter, especially when it's a first time thing.
Yeah, and we're going to go to Sherwood Country Club this week, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on in the show. But maybe a similar type feel. The tour was there, or kind of there, from 2013 all the way back to like 2004 or 3. So there are some guys that have played there quite a bit. We'll get into that later in the show. Let's talk about Xander for a second, though. He's had 6 runner-ups, and now, there will be some that have said he won the Tour Championship. If you ask Xander if he won the Tour Championship, I bet he'd say no. He didn't walk away with the $10 million and the title. So while the OWGR gave him first finishing points, it has been 6 straight runner-ups, Geoff. Is this a trend, or is this literally just golf variance, which we just talked about?
Yeah, I think it's mostly that. I mean, it's a little surprising that, like, you expect, I mean, it's kind of like Wolf last week, though. You expect Schauffele to come out on top of like a Kokrak Schauffele battle most of the time, right? So, but when Jason Kokrak is putting that well, I mean, shout out to him. Like, he went and won it. It's not like Schauffele played that bad, although he didn't really put a ton of pressure on him with his play the last few holes there. So, I mean, look, he's up to number 7 in the world. I mean, he's coming so close. He's performing so well in a lot of these big events. I tend not to like overemphasize guys not getting wins when they probably should have got one, but it's probably just more a little bit of frustration on his part. I mean, I think at the same time, you've got to think this, him coming in here and just grabbing like a second place off the US Open, it's got to at least get him some confidence going into Augusta. I mean, I think he's kind of also a player, like, he does have 4 wins. It's not like we're talking about a player who's like got 1
who's
win.
Never gotten it done, right?
Yeah, so I think if anything, this stretch is probably providing him a lot of confidence. I think that he's probably at a point where, I don't want to say he doesn't care about the CJ Cup, but like, he's probably, I think when he sits down, this is just going to be like a good stepping stone for him to finally get through in a major. Maybe that happens this year, I don't know, but it wouldn't shock me.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think the one thing that tends to get Xander in trouble, at least in my opinion, and I think it lost him the tournament on 16 and 18, to go 1 over on those 2 par 5s is terrible. And they're both set up by bad drives, and not drives to the right. Kind of his miss with the driver is long left. And that's kind of been the problem for him. His short game, as far as elite golfers, top 10 in the world, he probably has the best short game among them. I'm not sure he has the best short game in the world, but among the top 10 golfers in the world, I think he does, or very close to it. It is the driver. Whereas if he had McIlroy's driving ability, he wins that tournament by 4 or 5, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of interesting. The rest of his game, he used to be known just kind of for his like straight and longer driving, but the rest of his game is really like come into focus, which is why it's so interesting, the stretch he's going through, because you expect, maybe there's be like a dip with his putting or short game, but that's like remains so strong. So it almost feels like, he's taken a step back from the ball strike, maybe just to focus on that part of his game. And maybe once the rest of that comes around and gets a little bit sharper, but definitely like the fact he's trending well in those areas for Augusta. I think that that's something that's really going to help him on the scoring holes there. So like you said, he needs to maybe just need a little bit more open venue. I don't know, to help with the misses. Cause there were a couple holes there on Shadow Creek where, like you said, you hit it offline on some of those par 5s. You didn't really have an angle into the hole or anything. So I think it cost him on a lot of those holes this week. You're right. Shows up in the stats that way too. So interesting to watch, I guess, for Xander going forward. If he takes a big drop off with the driver or anything, I don't think it's hugely worrisome right now. But definitely interesting the way his game has trended this year. Because, like I said, they're around the green putting way better now.
It is, and we saw it a couple chip ins last week, and I'm not necessarily worried about the driving. I think it just may hold him back from his ultimate potential, which I think we've definitely seen it. I mean, a couple of runner-ups in a row and at least 3 top 5s in a row. So pretty good golf. So just want to tell you guys, you mentioned a couple of times that Augusta is coming up, and we're actually less than 30 days away. We're under 4 tournaments. So if you're not already an Awesemo Plus member on the PGA side, it is really a good time to join. We've got this tournament of Bermuda, where we're going to need a ton of research there, as the field size is going to be similar to what we saw at Corrales a few weeks ago, and then the Houston Open, and then the Masters. So really good stuff going on. Join us for the month, $29.95 for the month. And if you want to just try us out for the week, just $8.95. So stop guessing, start winning, and join Awesemo Plus today. And with that, I can tell you just a quick little tidbit. I was telling Jordan, our producer behind the scenes here, if you had just plugged in our projections last week and throw them into Fantasy Cruncher, number 69 was the nuts. It would have won the $5 last week. Projections were high on Neiman, Kokrak, and Russ Henley. So anytime that happens, you get 3 guys under 7,500 that the projections were high on. It's certainly set up for a really good week. So check us out, just $8.95 for the week. Really good.
Just to build on that, I mean, they definitely were high on Neiman. Neiman was like a big play for us last week. It was the top kind of value under DK, under AK. I know I wrote him up. There's a free article every week. If you want to get a taste of the projections, the approach, it's free. Check that out on Wednesdays, guys. If you're thinking of obviously buying the projection stuff, give you a little taste at least. So
Absolutely. So, okay, let's just go quickly around the world for last week's roundup, and then we'll get into some of our DFS review and see how some of the top players got their lineups done. And Phil Mickelson, he wins again on the Champions Tour, 2 for 2 on there. And I only bring that up because he's in this week's field. It's a no-cut event. It's a par 72, 7,000 yards.
Yep.
I mean, this could spell a little bit of Phil Mickelson being in play based on his salary, which we should get here very, very soon if it's not out already. So let's talk about Phil for a second. I mean, the guy loves making birdies. Is he in play for a no-cut event?
Yeah, absolutely. Why not, man? Like you said, I mean, we're getting, a West Coast venue. Phil's been pretty good on the West Coast over his career. Maybe, I don't want to say it's like Pebble Beach, but it's a shorter par 72 with 5 par 5s. I mean, and they're all kind of shorter par 5s as well. I don't see why not, man. I mean, this is this type of situations. I think you kind of like taking Phil, and you saw him perform well at that WGC, back in August. I think Phil kind of likes these events too. He just comes in. He doesn't have to worry about grinding so much against, a bunch of other players, a few less people in the field. He gets a little bit more airtime, I like these events for Phil Mickelson. I think these are kind of where he's aiming to perform well too, because he knows that if he gets a few points here, they a little bit more for him, to stay up in the FedEx standings and top 50 and all that stuff. So yeah, I like it. Again, we don't know the pricing yet on him, but I'm not expecting it to be, big. I'm not expecting him to be expensive coming off like a miscut and a T44. So we'll see if they factor in like the senior championship, the champions win, but I don't think they will. So.
Yeah, can you imagine starting a line with Phil Mickelson and Jordan Spieth and feeling confident about it this week? Quite there yet, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. All right, let's talk a little bit about the European Tour just for a second. Matt Wallace went over there. Looked like he was in absolute cruise control and showing kind of the form that he's got. But then Adrian Otegi comes up and shoots 9 under on Sunday. There's more golf variance and variability for you. I don't know if you caught any of that, but just want to make a quick note on Matt Wallace looking like he's returning to form.
Yeah, Matt Wallace, a guy who can get, just super hot on around the greens as well. Look like his ball striking is a little bit better. But yeah, Otega, very similar to Kokrak. Just came in on Sunday and was just like, I am not going to miss a putt. Sorry, my dog wanted in. But yeah, I mean, just very, very, very Kokrak-like. I mean, just came in and then was kind of dominant at the start and dominant at the end of that event. And it kind of sucks for Matt Wallace, but he's been on the other side of that before too. He's a guy who's made some Sunday charges and stuff like that. So it's something to note. I think that's the biggest takeaway. Just keep your eye on Matt Wallace because he's a guy who's come close over in the US even a couple times too.
Absolutely. All right, let's go into our DFS review. Our topic number 4 here. Number 3, not number 4. Sorry, I was counting correctly today. We're going to go over the points and ownership first. Chalk was okay last week, and we'll kind of go over that. But first, Jason Kokrak, 131. Xander Schauffele, 119. Ty Hatton, 118. Russell Henley, 112. Taylor Gooch, 109. Bubba Watson, 104. We talked about his propensity to be able to put up some DK points, and he didn't let us down. Joaquin Niemann, 94.5. Lanto Griffin, 92. Harris English, he showed up again after one bad week, 90.5. Cam Smith and Sebastian Munoz put up 87.5. Matt Fitzpatrick, 85.5. And there he is. I just mentioned him. Jordan Spieth, 85 points. Jeff, that was good enough for 13th in the field, but he came in 38th in the actual tournament. What do you make of that?
I make it is interesting, like you said. I mean, just from DFS perspective, it's interesting. I mean, I think it still says that, he's obviously not
ready to win
with the ball striking and stuff like that. But I think it's interesting from the fact that the
DFS points are there. That's the thing.
DFS points are there, right?
Like, which means scoring is there. 19 birdies, 1 eagle on the week. I mean, it means that whatever he's working on gives him the ability to score, which then he becomes price dependent. Which the reason why we're talking about him, to have a guy $7,300 be able to put up 85 points and be in the top 15 in DK scoring. It is a guy that we want to focus on in terms of building out lineups, especially even cash lineups.
Yeah, and again, it goes to the Phil point, man. I mean, these are probably the type of events where Spieth wants to come in. He gets 4 guaranteed rounds to work on his game. He doesn't have to sit there and be like, oh my God, is my driver going to leave me on Friday today? So I have to go try and grind out this cut. He just comes in and okay, I'm going to work on this. I'm going to work on that. We know Jordan Spieth's game isn't there, but if he can come in with a little less pressure, we can see, what happens. He'll make a ton of birdies. So absolutely, yeah, he's in play. I mean, a player I maybe should have given at least a little bit more consideration to last week. It's so easy to write him off right now. But again, this is a different, we're not in like the big, like we're not playing like Torrey Pines every week or something like that. The West Coast, this is like, limited field, weaker field events. Even the top players aren't in great form. I mean, we saw tons of top players bomb last week. That's the other thing, right? So
basically finished all around 30th for intents. They all had bad Sundays, which is disappointing. And
it's something to think about. Like these are way more important events for a guy like Jordan Spieth and other players who need points right now than they are for like
Rory. He needed a sponsor invite to get into these two events.
Exactly. So I mean, like again, for his game, for his points. These are big. You got to kind of think about motivation right now. And I've mentioned this before, but fall series, it really feels like it's a momentum thing. Like guys come in and they're either playing well and they play well through the whole fall series, or it's just like, it's very random. And we see things like Matt Wolff or Rory McIlroy shooting like 5 over on Sunday. Like it's just so definitely take note of the people who are playing well. Guys like Spieth who may be coming in here with some focus at least, and might make for good DFS plays. And Phil falls in that category too.
Yeah, a couple of ownership plays we'll talk about. Justin Thomas ended up coming in as the top owned. He came in 16th. Xander Schauffele, 25% and second. McIlroy, 25% and 14th. Neiman, 22 and 7. Matt Wolff, 22% and 70th. Oof. John Rahm, 17% and 20th. Dan Berger, 17 and 22nd. Abraham Ancer, also 17 and 23rd. Sungjae Im, 16% and 26th. Great call by Ben Raza on the Wednesday night show with me. Sungjae Im, he said he expected to be much higher owned than the previous week. It might have been a time to jump off. And 26th is not that bad. But the chalk, what the problem was, if you didn't have Jason Kokrak, who actually was just 2 below that, if you didn't have Kokrak and you didn't have Xander, it was a really tough time to cash, because you saw all these other guys that I just mentioned come in the top 25. So if you had Kokrak and a mixture of the guys above, which likely you did, you were much better off. So while the chalk may not have hit perfectly, it hit enough when you mixed in the mid-level chalk, which was Kokrak and Henley.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, one of the heavier owned players in Xander, finishing second, having like the second biggest point total, that he was really kind of the must play if you wanted any kind of cash, obviously. So no one else, really coming up there and contending in terms of like heavy chalks. So Xander was really like the play you needed. Obviously, if you had Kokrak, I mean, that would have made up for it, but obviously not as heavily owned as Xander. So he was really kind of the key to unlocking everything last week.
For sure. And the single entry team is back as we go into our top GPP lineup review. Assassin 9955 coming out of nowhere. He had just one entry. He used 49,700 salary and a total ownership of 83%. So maybe the ownership just a tad high, but for a no cut, it makes sense. And the way he differentiated was to leave some salary on the table. And a pretty good lineup here, 653 points. Had Kokrak, Henley, Neiman, the 3 we just mentioned. Had Ty Hatton and Xander. Ty Hatton coming in under 10%, ended up being probably the best against the grain play on the slate. Yeah, Kokrak was 10% on, so he was less than Kokrak. And then kind of just a throw in with Ancer. So not a perfect lineup. Could have picked about, I think, 10, maybe even 12 other guys that were either cheaper than Ancer or had more points than him. So real quality line for a no-cut event, leaving 300, maybe a little bit higher on the chalk, but see, it ended up working.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, definitely like taking advantage of the Neiman Henley value. I mean, that made a ton of sense. Xander, I talked about a little bit off the start. It came down to him and Rory. Obviously, he had to make the right choice there last week. And then you're right. I mean, I think Hatton and Kokrak just solid GPP pivots. I mean, we knew they weren't going to be highly owned. Hatton is one of those guys too. It was probably easy to write off last week because he's flying in from England, but he is just one of those form players, man. Like when he gets in a groove, it'll just stay for like 3 or 4 events, and he'll be all over it, either putting or approaches or whatever. We saw him, get away a little bit and go on this like that Hatton tilt in round 3, but he got it together on Sunday too and came up big. So
he's like a rich man's Ches Reavie, honestly. He's upside's way better than Reavie, but when he gets in form, he just stays there, whether he's winning a bunch or what have you. So great call on that. Hatton, again, in the field this week. Similar, probably got to take a look at him again, especially with his rights. I suspect will be up close to 10K. So interesting there. All right, let's go into our DFS review now. I love the fact that a single entry person won again, by the way. It just goes to show you do not need 150 entries to take down the 100K. But if you do want to do 150 entries, here's how some of the top pros did it last week. We'll start off with our own Alex Awesemo Baker. He was probably a little bit ticked off with Justin Thomas, who got it all the way to 11 under on Sunday, and then all of a sudden came in and was just terrible on his remaining holes, similar to Rory McIlroy. But he was at 68% of Justin Thomas. He bought into Gary Woodland's price, which would have made sense, but the injury suspect there, maybe Gary Woodland is not quite back to full health. John Rahm, 33%, Xander Schauffele, 31%, Justin Rose, 31%, and quite an up and down week for Rose. I mean, got it to a 3-4 under, just a lot of double bogeys. His game is inconsistent, which is not something we typically say about Rose. Jason Kokrak, 30%. So we had the winner at 30%. McIlroy, 23%. Horsell, 19%. Kuchar, 19%. Palmer, 17%. Neiman and Connors also at 17%. But that only got him 1,129th in the $10. Does that surprise you, having 3x the field on Kokrak? Or is it really just that Gary Woodland, who was the second guy in his lineup quite a bit? This is the problem with no cuts. This is what I was going to say, the note I had. This is the problem with no cuts, where even if you have the winner at 30%, you need to hit a 6 of 6 parlay to do anything, especially in a no cut.
Yeah, those boat anchors, man, like Woodland and a couple other dudes there, obviously, like Rose, Kuchar. I mean, there's just boat anchors. It's amazing how much they drag you down. And I mean, obviously, probably if you had bumped up the Neiman ownership a little bit, that probably would have helped. Only about 17%. Having no Henley obviously was probably a big thing there. Going with guys like we said, I mean, Woodland and Kuchar over him, that probably hurt because, I mean, Henley had some ownership, right? So that's probably what dragged him down the most and just didn't give him a chance at anything better than that. But I mean, it's solid, obviously, taking double the Kokrak and stuff like that, and being overweight on Xander. I mean, it's definitely probably feels like he missed something there this week. And even Justin Thomas, I mean, being having a pretty solid week there, at least outperforming others in his salary range. So yeah, that just one or two is a lot closer probably than the results say of a big week. But yeah, that is the no cut event, man. I mean, just you got to have access to all those good values, and
if you don't, and they're relatively highly owned like they were this week, it's a tougher game to cash. So I wanted to put on a 20 entry max because I know that a lot of our listeners go into that this week. So this is how I played the 20 entry max last week. And this was based off of the projections that I give away in my model. So it's an average of my own projections and Awesemo's. And this is kind of what it gave you. All I did was I plugged it in to Fantasy Cruncher, put in just one unique player, so I didn't really change much. And this is what it gave me. It gave me Neiman at 95%, Xander at 70%, Sungjae Im at 65%, Watson at 60%, Billy Horschel 55%, Kokrak 50%, KC 35%, Hovland 30%, McIlroy and Matsuyama 20%, Berger, Thomas, and Cantlay a little bit lesser owned at 15%. But wanted to bring up, it was I think I played it in the $3 birdie and just 60 to enter, and it was about a 4x return. So this is what needed to have on the 4x return. Now, granted, I did not have a positive week overall. My big lineup, which we're going to go over here in a couple of minutes, did not cash. But good to see the GPP get it done. Now, I wanted to bring up, for a no-cut event, is this the way that you have to go? You really have to go big or go home, right, for a no-cut event. And as you can see, this is what it took to get a 4x return. Yeah,
it definitely lends itself more. I mean, you want, as obviously, like, we're talking about being overweight Xander, but it still wasn't enough, obviously, for Alex to get that one lineup in. So it is in a lot of ways. It's funny. I mean, the big no cut events, you think there's like a little less variance, but you have to nail it so much more in the no cuts because it's a lesser field. Obviously, you have lesser combos. There's less bad lineups out there, so to speak. So yeah, absolutely. I think that's probably, especially for 20 max, it makes a lot of sense. Obviously, you pick out the 2 or 3 best plays you want, you go heavy on those and make the player pool smaller. And it definitely leads to more variance, which is why these weeks are frustrating. I mean, talked about it. It is very much all or nothing. I think they're higher variance for sure because you're either on these dudes and you're well overweight on them, or you're you maybe have a little piece and you just didn't get enough. But
yep, and I think for no cut events, I think that's more of the route I'm going to take. In the cut events, I think you get even more variability. So I'm a little, obviously I'm a little bit more concerned. I know that even if I go 90% Neiman, I'm likely to get him 4 rounds, and I'm still likely to get 16 birdies. And at 7,500, that's a pretty good return regardless of what he does. Now, we got a lot of placement points out of him. He came in 6th, so we got 12 placement points, plus we got a hot putter. So those are the things that I like to do. Again, I think at the no-cut event is more specific to that. And we even saw it with Alex. He went 67% on Justin Thomas, which, we cover him each and every week. Normally, he's around 30%. So obviously, this is definitely the trend. And certainly when we go on and talk about the other 2 guys that we're going to look at, Brick 75 and Earwig. And Earwig was the top GPP performer last week. We'll start with him, and here we can see Xander Schauffele 82% at the top, Justin Thomas and Rory in at 40, Henley 38, Matsuyama and Kokrak at 35%. Plenty more guys there above 20% as well, including Horschel, Neiman, Harmon, Berger, and the like. So he came in 3rd last week, this user named Earwig. Again, no cut event. You can see the allocation's really heavy. He only used 25 golfers, which is only about a third of the field. So maybe that's a little bit too aggressive for me, but I like the allocation element. I would probably bump up for 150 lineups. I would probably have more like 35 or 40 golfers, but that's just the way I play.
Yeah, for 150, I can definitely get behind that. Obviously went big on really went big on Xander, which was worked out perfectly. But double on guys like Kokrak and Hanley, obviously like those values. So interesting. He didn't have Oh, no, he did have Neiman there. Okay, sorry. So never mind. I mean, he really nailed it then. Yeah, even getting exposure to guys like...
and still didn't even win. Couldn't even beat a single.
No, I know. Still, I mean, and I guess Hatton looked like it probably... Does he have any Hatton? No, so
Hatton was the big really miss on all of the pros. As you can see, Brian Hooper above, he didn't have Hatton either.
Right.
Hatton seemed to be the big miss from all these guys.
Yeah, and I kind of get it. Like, I just really couldn't get myself on Hatton. I mean, 9,600, he's a good player, but that is a little bit expensive for him, with some of the elite players coming back and coming over from Europe, that kind of narrative. It was hard to get on him. It wasn't really like rating out for me great or anything. I don't think it was really rating out anywhere great. So just one of those weeks, though, man, where, like, led the field in strokes gained approach. He putted okay, and he made a bunch of birdies, especially on his final round. So, yeah, it was kind of a tough weekend to pay up for that lower ownership, and I kind of understand why these guys didn't do it because I had multiple reasons not to do it myself.
Yeah, especially with Xander Schauffele, for example, only 700 above him. Matt Wolff, even, who was highly owned, only 600 above him. Certainly, I guess people were ready to trust him over Hatton. Probably not going to happen this week. Okay, so I believe let's go into our lineups now and talk about kind of where we went. I had my top lineup here, or I should say my biggest lineup of the week. I started off with McIlroy, and you and I talked about it. We were going to go McIlroy from the very beginning, 84.5 points. He came in the top 15 in points, but for a guy that was 4th in salary, obviously the switch from McIlroy to Xander, believe it or not, though, I checked, would not have gotten me into the cash. So it really wasn't McIlroy that hurt me. Where it was is Patrick Cantlay. But when I go and look at the play, at 7.5% ownership coming in off of second place, honestly, Jeff, I'm not that upset about going Patrick Cantlay, even though ultimately it ended up costing me a cash.
Well, and this is one of the reasons why Hatton was low owned, right? I mean, like Hatton and Cantlay at the same kind of price tag, and Cantlay coming off like a decent finish, Vegas guy. I mean, there's just so many reasons to take Patrick Cantlay there, but Callie's game has been weirdly off lately, so very inconsistent, for him anyways. We expect, obviously, a lot of his game after, such good play over the last couple of years. But, yeah, that was kind of the difference. I mean, I know I made that mistake in basically, whenever I went to that range, it was the same thing for me. I just couldn't get off a lower-owned Patrick Cantlay there. I just thought it was a good move, too. So, you live and die with those decisions. It's fine. I mean, Cantlay's a good player. I think the price there was fine, but it does speak, like, I don't, that Schreiner's top 10 or whatever he had, like, might have just been a bit of a mirage. So something to keep an eye on. We'll see how he progresses here.
Maybe more of just a course fit thing than anything else. And it's too bad because with Cam Champ and Harry Higgs both scoring over 75 points or at or over 75 points, Jeff, I mean, for a week where 82 points was top 15.
Yeah,
those guys, 6,400, 6,300 was pretty on the money.
Yeah, I didn't realize Cam Champ had 3 eagles. I mean, I didn't pay attention to him at all.
That's what he does.
But I mean, it is what he does. I mean, he's probably going to make him a good play again this week. I don't know if he's in the field. I can't even remember. But yeah, just really interesting. I mean, it really speaks to just how these no-cut events work. I mean, you just don't necessarily need your guy in the top 30 to pay off, assuming you nail the actual winners of the event. Your other players just need you to score somehow. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, you can totally see scoring, even just on this very, very micro scale. Cam Champ comes in a tie for 40th, right, and scores 2 more points than Harry Higgs, who comes in a tie for 21st. So
21st? Yeah, it's crazy.
It's weird. And we brought it up with Spieth already before. So, all right, let's go into your lineup and similar type of build, similar type of process. You had McIlroy and Im. We both found ourselves there. You found yourself to Bubba Watson and Cam Smith. 2 great plays. Where you went wrong was Oosthuizen and Casey. Yep. I fell into the Casey trap as well, man. I thought this would be a perfect bounce back candidate spot for him.
Yeah, I just couldn't get off it. I considered a couple other guys in that range, but I was just like, 8,000 Paul Casey's not even trending to high ownership. That's the thing, right? So realistically, I should have just taken that, gone down to that Neiman value I was talking about, obviously. I really wish I had just gone, super overweight on that and just trusted it. I did have some exposure to Handley in another lineup. But, here, obviously, I went a bit more balanced, played the, tried to play the good form on Usti coming in. I thought this would be a good setup for him, too. He's just playing so well throughout the bag, but he just kind of mailed it in after, like, an okay first round. So there's really nothing there. He did have 2 eagles, actually. I mean, it wasn't, like, the worst, but wasn't very good either for how much he was. Guys like Answer outscored him, so that wasn't great. And, yeah, Casey, I mean, I don't even know what to say. I was like, I went Rory over Xander, so this was never going to be a big week. But from a process standpoint, like Casey at 8K, I just don't know how you could get away from that, especially for GPPs, especially under 10% owned. So I was like never going to get away with it. Get away from that. I'll live and die with it. I like the Bubba call. He's playing tee to green right now. I wasn't shocked that he played well. Cam Smith I thought was really good too. For his price. So pretty happy with those guys. But the rest of the guys, it was more just, I think Usti was maybe the only guy I can make a case for getting off of just because, you could have gone up and taken advantage of a player in the 9K range and gone down to Neiman. But other than that, I'm not going to beat myself up over like 8K Paul Casey. So.
Yeah, no, it was a good play. And on Saturday, we just had Greg mention in our chat that if you had played him in Showdown, he actually was a pretty good play for Saturday. He shot 567. I think he might have wasn't bogey free, but he had a 3 birdie streak in a round, which is always very, very helpful.
It's just another factor of these no-cut events. Like I don't want to say I hate them, but like God, they're frustrating sometimes when guys.
That exact reason, yeah.
They're not like he might not even be in bad form. He's just he didn't it's Vegas, it's the fall. It's just the mindset, right? And the mental focus. Obviously, winning golf tournaments is so hard. You saw Kulkrax, the guy's been on the verge for so long. Everything's got to go right. So when you're coming into one of these no-cut events, start off well. It's so easy, especially when you're a successful golfer, to just take your foot off the pedal for a round or two. And you saw him come back on Saturday, and it's just like, man, like where have you been? So, anyways,
so I want to tie last week up in a bow real quick, but before I do. We haven't mentioned yet, and one of the most unfortunate withdraws occurred possibly ever in PGA DFS as Jason Day was in the second to last group on Sunday and withdrew on the second hole. Now, granted, he still scored 67 points for the week, so all wasn't too much of a lost cause, but he could have legitimately put up a top 5 score. And likely if he plays on Sunday and plays out the round and ends up coming in the top 10, he could have even been in the winning GPP lineup. Just a really, really tough break. He's listed in the field again this week. Can you touch him in no-cut events? Can you touch him at all? I mean, this was one of the worst withdrawals. And there's 3 or 4 guys that we know are on that withdrawal list that they do it much more than any other golfer. Kevin Na, Louis Oosthuizen are the other 2 that come to mind real quickly.
Yeah, actually, it's funny. I mean, I was looking at Kevin Na this week, and I'm like, I really want to trust like Kevin Na here. I know he hasn't withdrawn for 2 events, but like he's kind of due now. So I actually, the funny thing about Day is I was watching online for a bit because obviously NFL was on yesterday, Yep. I didn't realize Day had withdrawn until like the 16th hole. I'm like,
really was
shot tracker not showing Jason Day. I'm like, then it clicked. I'm like, did he withdraw in the second to last group? Like, so I go back and look. I'm like, oh my God, that is terrible. I almost took a shot on Jason Day too, like for betting and stuff. So I mean, I was kind of breathing a sigh of relief because, I mean, like that would have just been like so tilting. Sorry to anyone who had to go through that, by the way. Like that is annoying as heck.
I did play him, of course, at about 40% on the final round showdown, which was about his ownership anyway, to be honest with you. So it's not like I lost that much.
Yeah.
But brutal to see it.
Do it in like the first round, just so I mean, like, come on. But I mean. Wow, I don't know. And he's in the field this week, isn't he? Like,
yeah, well, he's listed right now. Who knows if that'll end up happening? But yeah, he is listed in.
And then he was playing well before he withdrew. Like he was legitimately playing really good. So
his irons looked like they'd come back. His short was good. So I mean, like, he's healthy. What to do with this guy is
I don't know. I honestly have no. You just have to treat him as a highly variable play. Like you're just obviously. You're probably going to get him at like 4% ownership this week. And it really, in a way, it's nice because like it's a limited field. And, you know, when you're getting a guy with the upside of Jason Day in this field, it's kind of nice because you're kind of guaranteed lower ownership on a high end player. But holy cow, man. Yeah, this is like
insane.
It's kind of like, you know, you're doing mental gymnastics now. Like, am I stupid for doing this or am I really smart? And like, I don't really want to do this, but like, I almost feel like just watching Jason Day over the first 3 rounds last week, I kind of want to. So I don't know. I'll be,
mulling over this one for a little while. Yeah, it's tough. It's a really tough situation because he was playing super well, but the withdrawal capability and no cut. If he withdraws, I mean, you just forget about it. You can just write it off. All right, well, let's now, since we're talking about this week, let's go ahead and move on. But before we do, I wouldn't be remiss if I didn't ask everyone to like and subscribe. If you're not already a subscriber to our YouTube channel here, go ahead and press the button. And, of course, give us a few likes in here. I see a couple of more of us join or a dislike. If you don't like what we're saying or you disagree with us, we'll take it. We'll take any type of feedback we can get here. So let's move on to Sherwood Country Club, which, interestingly enough, it's one of the only setups we'll see like this year. And something I want to talk about to see if there is another angle we should be playing or we should be more heavily weighting on some of these guys. And it is a par 72, 7,100 yards, but it's 5 par 5s, 5 par 3s, and 8 par 4s. So that, I think, in and of itself will likely push the scoring into the 20 under range, not because the course is easier than last week, but simply because guys we know score easier on the par 5. So I think we'll get, the winner in 2013 was Tiger Woods, I think, or maybe Zach Johnson was the winner that year, but it was at minus 18. Now, like I mentioned before, Sherwood hosted the Chevron World Challenge, which is now turned into the Hero World Challenge. It was held at Sherwood for almost 10 years, or maybe just over 10 years. And the winning average score was around minus 19, but now we're getting almost a full field, or 2.5, 3 times as much as we had before. 78 golfers, Jeff. We expect the minus 20 or better winner this week, correct?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, look at the weather. It doesn't look that bad or anything like that. I mean, that was definitely my first inclination. Like, the winning score here it wasn't actually that low when they did the Chevron. Like, it was around like 13 to 18 most years.
Yep.
But, you got to think a little distance advantage. The players are better. Like, maybe it's a little bit similar to this week, but I even think it'll be a little bit easier than it was at Shadow Creek. It's just my opinion, just looking at the course and how it's going to play. It does have a drivable par 4. It's got 5 par 5s. The par 3s don't look super difficult either. I think the par 3s were sort of some of the tougher holes on the course last week. So I think all things considered, yeah, I think you'll probably see scoring maybe a little bit lower, a little bit better overall. And a player maybe to get like in that 21, 22. I mean, the only thing, it's a little bit cooler weather this week. So that could be something that just maybe makes these par 5s a little bit less reachable. Something to think about. But, overall, I mean, I think the big question here is it going to be like one of those courses where you need to be a big hitter? You look at the winners of the Chevron Challenge, like Graham McDowell, Luke Donald, Jim Furyk won it. Like, these aren't long hitters. So maybe it plays a little bit similar to last week where we just see good ball strikers and not necessarily you have to be like the beast off the tee. Good ball strikers and good putting. So maybe a little bit more of a second shot course than than we think or realize. That's just me, like, looking at past events. I'm not saying that's how I was going to play, but I think we could see similar type of stuff to what we saw last week.
I think the rough length will probably be a big thing this week. Obviously, the Invesco Championship for the Champions Tour has been here, but the difference between the two tours is definitely rough length and green speed. There's no doubt about it. Rough length is about an inch longer. I suspect because it is September, probably some overseeding conditions, maybe even get a Bermuda. I don't know. We'll have to see. In Malibu, it's pretty nice temperature, so they may not need Bermuda there. That event might be able to survive all year round. West Coast is obviously not my forte. I haven't been out there that much. Definitely haven't been to Malibu, but that does bring me to my point that it is Malibu. The unlimited budget that likely Sherwood Country Club has will give a similar feel in types of the manicureness of the greens and where they want to get it to. If they want the green speeds at 15, they can get it there. If they want it at 12, they can get it there. So similar to Shadow Creek in that regard, I think. But I think the five par fives will certainly play into it. And I think the rough length will probably see around 2 to 2.5 inches. So maybe a little bit of a premium on fairways hit, but it's already tree lined anyway. So if you're off 20 or 30 yards this week with any type of shot, I mean, you're going to definitely be in trouble. It's in the middle of two state forests, for goodness sakes.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Which I think puts a premium on driving accuracy. Sorry.
Yeah, and it could. That's kind of what I agree. I mean, it does look like there's some elevation too and stuff like that. So might put a little bit more, just on approaches and just, overall accuracy. Like you think, shorter par fives, it might be a bomber's course, but I don't think most of the field is going to have trouble reaching these greens in two. So, like, obviously distance is always an advantage, but, as we saw with Kokrak last week, like, he still gained. The reason he won is because he just putted insanely. So he drove it fine.
Irons were good too to give him the opportunity for putting.
Yeah, absolutely. And realistically, I think his driving stats might have actually been his worst last week. So I really do think it's going to be, in some ways, quite similar to the course we saw last week. Elevation changes, like you said, nicely, really highly manicured course, reachable par fives kind of for everyone. The one thing that might throw a dent into that is like I said, maybe it's a little bit cooler temps and the big hitters do get a slight advantage, but I don't know if it's going to be that bad. So
Cam Champ took down an event in California for one of his 2 wins on the PGA Tour. Yep. One would think 20 par fives over 4 days. He's almost a must roster. Now, we don't have salaries quite yet, which is the latest that the DraftKings has done. But we do have pricing, so we can talk about our first clicks at least. This is where betting in DFS differs for me because, like, I scroll down and I see Cameron Champ in the betting odds at 150 to 1, but I can tell by looking at his statistics, I'm not ready to bet him for a top 10 finish even, maybe a top 20. But for DFS purposes, if he's not 7,500 or above, for me, there's no reason not to roster this guy because he's shown me enough that I do believe he's going to get another 2 eagles this week. He's got 20 par fives, and he obviously drives maybe the longest on tour or maybe the longest in this field, at least for pricing on it. So any other golfers like Cameron Champ that you would say, I'm not going to go to you in the betting markets, you can say Jordan Spieth as well, but I am going to look at you in DraftKings. For DraftKings purposes, Champ is definitely a good call with the 5 par fives. I mean, I think you really need to factor that in. Obviously, we've talked about it off the top with Spieth. I think Spieth probably fits into that category as well. 100%. I think Spieth, Phil, and Cameron Champ are just good no-cut event and plays, and even more so this just with the type of course and scoring we're going to see. As far as anyone else who falls into that range, I mean, no one else really kind of pops off just as a pure score. Maybe if you get like Benny on Poa Greens, no thanks. Just forget I said that. That was quick.
Yeah. I don't have a problem going back. I mean, Sebastian Munoz is interesting. He can get it out there a little bit. He can get hot with the putter. We'll see what his price is. But, I think those are really the 3 type of guys for DFS. If we're getting cheap prices on them again, feel free to sprinkle them in. I mean, it's just a good – if Cam Champ does actually just sharpen up a little bit or gets hot with the putter here, I mean, and he does end up in the top 20, I can't see him not factoring in with all these par fives. Like it'll be a for sure thing. But the rest of the guys just kind of look like, are they going to get hot on the greens here? Are they going to just, have a good reeks around the greens? Because it doesn't look like there's any super other prolific par 5 scorers that I'd be like, oh yeah, you got to roster that guy. You could take a shot with Mark Leishman coming through, but I mean, he is really in a funk. So that's the only other dude that really sticks out to me other than those top 3. Maybe Carlos Ortiz. He's been a pretty good West Coast player.
Okay.
He's going to get hot with his putter, but not in the same category as like a Phil, Spieth, or Champ for me.
So you actually mentioned one of my first clicks there, not right at the end, a little bit before, and my second click as well. Well, sitting at 90-1 to win now, I say this often, but I don't think, just like I would say about Kokrak last week, I don't think that Kokrak could win. I don't think that Cameron Smith or Sebastian Munoz can win. But at 90-1 odds, sliding down from there, 14-1 on the top 5 and 6-1 on the top 10 and plus 225 on the top 20. Those are my first 2 clicks. Both of them are playing very, very good right now. Both around the green, they're looking good. We have the similar type surfaces. We're going from Shadow Creek, which is bent, to Sherwood, which is also bent. So some familiarity. I think we're going to have green speeds just as fast as we did last week. So Munoz and Cameron Smith, both guys that can score on DraftKings, both guys playing well, and both guys that certainly love this early season stuff. We had Cam Smith obviously win the Sony last year, Sebastian Munoz win the Sanderson Farms a year ago. So I like both of these guys. I think they're both trending in the right direction, and at 90-1, seem like pretty good values.
Yeah, I'm definitely on the Munoz play. Got to look up a little bit more on Cam Smith here. He can be a little bit, wild off the tee, so that driving accuracy can be a bit of an issue. But, scoring wise, he's doing it right now. His around the green game is kind of back to where it was. Yeah, he had a really good week around the greens last week. And with him, that is a big factor of his game. Like the ball striking will come and go, but if he's playing well around the greens, he can compete kind of anywhere. So definitely like the Munoz call. Probably will possibly get a piece of Cam Smith here as well. So from top 20 and just like a DFS perspective, like those, where's my odds here? Yeah, for me, Munoz, like I said, definitely kind of popped off. I mean, I haven't bet him outright. I'm not sure if I'm going to, but I'll definitely consider him for a top 10 or a top 20 bet. Probably will look to maybe even go a little bit heavier from that perspective this week. There's really nobody down there that I love for like a long shot top 20. I mean, I mentioned Leishman, but I just don't know if that's worth it. I think Carlos Ortiz might actually be like, if you're looking for like a long shot top 20, he might be the most interesting to me. He's made a couple cuts here and there. He's been okay. Like he's got a decent record on the West Coast over his career. He's played okay at West Coast venues like Riviera and stuff like that. He can get hot with his putter. CJ Cup last week, obviously he was actually okay. Tee to green, ball striking, just didn't putt well. So that could easily flip one week. My first click was more just as an outright. I'm going to get back on Harris English this week. I like the way he finished. Started off really slow last week, and then he was 13 under over his last 3 rounds. Gained strokes pretty much everywhere. The last 3 rounds as well, off the tee, ball striking, putting. Like to see that. He's been a really good West Coast player over his career. If there's a little bit of Poa mix in the greens here, which I've heard there might be, then that's good. But even if there isn't, I just think he's scoring well. I think he's a player who can get hot with his putter, doing everything well on like a bit of a shorter course where it's not necessarily going to play like to the Bombers necessarily. I like it. That was my first click for an outright.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good call. In terms of outrights for me this week, it's a tough one because with a shorter course, I feel like it does bring a couple of more people into it. I think one of those people that it brings into it, but his game is so volatile right now. It's Tommy Fleetwood, 45-1. Maybe thought those odds were a little bit long, but given the way he's playing, I just felt like seeing Tiger Woods at 33-1 and seeing Tommy Fleetwood at 45-1. I would sense there's a little bit of value there with Fleetwood. He almost won a golf tournament over in Europe recently, so it's not like form is that far away. Stretch.
And there are some interesting odds here. Like I actually was going to bring, but like Paul Casey's 75-1.
Yep.
Like he's like 50-1 to win.
90-1 actually on DK Sportsbook right now.
Yeah.
Wait, again, use OddsShopper. You'll be able to see all of this on one page. Just wanted to let people know about that.
Absolutely.
So a couple more guys. I mean, I was really confused at this one. Maybe not confused, but maybe I'm not used to seeing all these guys priced above him. But Justin Rose, 110-1. Is that an appropriate price for him right now?
Well, I think Casey and Rose are actually make for interesting bets. Like, I'm probably going to take a shot with one of these guys this week. I don't think that, especially in Casey's case, I don't think that he's playing that bad. I mean, this was a player who was like top 20 at the U.S. Open a couple weeks ago. I just think it's a factor of the fall series in these no-cut events. Yeah, I think you really need to just look at the bigger picture with a lot of these guys. I'm not saying this is the week they turn it around necessarily, but this is definitely the week you can take a shot. Casey's a dude who just about won. Even Rose, we could make he was top 10 at the Pga Championship 2 months ago. I think
in California.
He's definitely been more inconsistent than Casey, but like he's capable. I mean, we saw him come off the hiatus and put up a top 5, a couple top 10s. He gets hot with the putter and just gets rolling. The more I think about it, I might even take a shot with both these guys at these odds. You just don't get them at these these limited field events at these prices. 2 quality players. I don't know. Maybe Justin Rose is done, but I don't think taking a shot with him at like 100-1 this week is like a bad thing. This is, it definitely is better than doing it at like 50-1 last week. So a little bit of investment there for me. Definitely, probably, I think I'm going to get in on Casey. I'll look into Rose a little bit more, but I think Casey is the one who I'm expecting to see like the switch flipped at one of these fall events eventually for him.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I forgot to apologize about the when we were talking about the ZOZO. It is a no cut that we've mentioned a couple times. 78 players in the field, and that 78 is gone by top 60 in the FedEx Cup points list from last year, which like 58 of the top 60 ended up coming in. So like only 61 and 62 ended up getting in this field, which is why Fleetwood, Rose, Spieth, and a couple of others needed sponsor invites to get in, but also getting in are, I believe, about 8 or 9 players from various Japanese golf tour ways. A couple of them from the OWGR, one of them from winning a weird tournament. A couple of names I just wanted to bring up there, just for the purposes of this being the ZOZO. Takumi Kanaya, he's one that just turned pro recently and certainly has some accolades of being a superb player eventually on the PGA Tour. Jazz Janawatan, we've seen a couple of times, obviously over here. Shugo Imahara as well. So those 3 names we've certainly seen. Sean Norris as well. Sean Norris, we just saw at the U.S. Open and played pretty decently for a couple of rounds. He's up there at 600-1 to win. And again, I'm not recommending betting him in any stretch. Just kind of more talking about how the field is bringing out. But if you had to roster and or bet on any of these golfers that maybe nobody has ever heard of, any of those guys interest you this week? Or I'll put one more step into it because we don't have salaries. If any of them are min-priced, do they interest you? Or is it just too deep of a player field with the PGA Tour players where it's going to be tough to get to them?
It's probably going to be tough to get to them.
And Janawatan won't be 6,000 either. So it's like if you wanted to play him, he's not going to be priced. Yeah.
I think Sean Norris is probably the guy. I mean, he has been over here a little bit. You like that. He's obviously seen the competition at the U.S. Open. A guy I think is at least capable of holding on for a couple rounds, maybe making you a few birdies. And, we'll see. If he's a min priced, I could see. I mean, I'll look into it a little bit more. But you mentioned, I mean, if the guy can make a small appearance at the U.S. Open, I mean, this is a big event for him. Very much like, it is for, like we mentioned, players like a Spieth or something. So he's going to come in here and give you his all for 4 rounds. He's not going to take off to the strip or anything like that. Like Matthew Wolff did last week, maybe. But it'll be interesting to see if he's the bare min. I think it could be. But if there's players like, if we have like Tyler Duncan down there again or someone like that.
Especially like Nick Taylor or Tyler Duncan at mid-price, you're picking them over Norris, right?
It'll be pretty tough to take them over Norris. So it really does. There is 11 of these players, though. I mean, that's like a pretty big portion of this field, isn't it? I was surprised.
Which is interesting. I think it probably now becomes more about DraftKings point scoring than it does about finishing points because, you're almost guaranteed in the top 60 at that point.
Exactly.
Not that any of these guys can't go out and beat any of the PGA Tour pros. They certainly can. I'm not saying that. But in a betting mindset, I would take PGA Tour pro almost every single time, given on who it is and form and a couple of other things. So, all right, because pricing is still not out, let's do something different where we're going to look at the odds that DK Sportsbook and others have put out. And we're going to kind of talk about where we think the pricing is and where it's going to lead us to possibly roster guys. So last week, John Rahm was, and also wanted to mention, I think we're not getting pricing. Maybe they're waiting to hear about Dustin Johnson, who right now is the second favorite in the field, but we don't know if he's going to play because he has to get 2 negative tests. One of them was, I believe, on Sunday and another one today. So if he tests negatively both days, he'll be back in the field. So maybe DK is just waiting to put pricing. They don't want to have Dustin Johnson withdraw again and have pricing get messed up. Mm-hmm. So let's do a DJ not in the field first. Okay. And at 10-1 with John Rahm, I think that means he's going to come in at 11,000. I don't think they're putting him over this week. Plus with the form, or at least the finish last week, kind of less than par, I think he's going to slide in at 11. Based on the odds, is Xander Schauffele really going to be the second highest priced golfer in this field?
Yeah, he 100%.
It looks like it, right?
100% is. I'm going to say, yeah, I 100% agree with you on John Rahm. I think he's going to be 11K flat.
Yep.
I think with the 11 sponsors exemptions and stuff, it also gives people less of those min-value plays to work with. So having him at 11 kind of makes a little bit of sense from that perspective. You don't have like guys down at 6K that are really that viable in most likelihood. Yeah, we'll see. But yeah, I think Xander's going to be 10-8. I think he's going to be right behind him. There's not much difference in the odds between Rahm and Xander. I've even seen books at them at the same price. So
yeah, and McIlroy and Thomas are not that far behind. So I think we could even get a $100 difference between all four of them. So we're going to get Rahm at 11, Xander 10-9, Justin 10-8, and Rory 10-7. I don't think we're going to get much difference.
Yeah, you could. I mean, I think the biggest difference, if we do get one, will be like 10-6 to 11. Like you might get like McIlroy at 10-6 or something, and Xander like 10-8, and Thomas thrown in between or something like that. But that's how. That's how.
Ty Hatton and Webb Simpson coming real close to 10K.
Yeah, that's the other one. Like, is Ty Hatton going to be? How much? Like, what do you think his price is going to be? Like, he's going to be over 10K, right?
I think he's going to be 10 flat, and I think Webb Simpson will be 10 flat and Hatton will be 10-1, or Hatton will be 10 and Webb Simpson will be 9-9. I think we're priced right in that range with these 7 guys. And Morikawa bringing up, say, somewhere in the 9,700 range. I don't think he's quite ready for a 10K. But given that, are you inclined to, notwithstanding ownership, are you inclined to go with one of these guys knowing that pricing between the top 4 at least is going to be super tight? Are you going to fade the 4 and look to Hatton and Simpson, or do you have a lean on one of the top 4 where you're going to say, I like the price?
Probably lean towards Justin Thomas right now. If I had to take one just off the top of my head. I mean, Xander is playing great. I just don't know how much more you can ask for or do, from his situation. Now he's priced right at the top, basically as the most expensive player. I think Thomas has some room for improvement. He showed, obviously, he wasn't that far off. Did not know what is going on with Rory's game. He just can't put it together for 4 rounds in a no-cut event. Obviously, if his focus isn't 100% there, that's not good. So I definitely liking the way Justin Thomas is looking right now. That's probably where I would go. I don't know what to do with Hatton and Simpson. I think if you are going to fade those top guys, just putting your kind of, shoving in on one of those makes sense. You should get low ownership, especially on Hatton over 10K. I can't see people, even after 2 good starts, being like super pumped to go there. So, but doesn't necessarily, I don't like it. I kind of like Ty Hatton this week. And, maybe I can see starting with him maybe being the play. Although I think that, I just kind of like Ty Hatton, paying up for him again if he's going to be over 10K. I think that'll keep ownership down.
For sure. I totally agree. So, again, like I said, for some reason, it is the first time before that I can remember that we don't have prices, especially for a no buy.
Been a while.
Coming in. Yeah. So instead, we're gonna I'm gonna ask you a couple of guys that I might be interested in, and I want you to tell me the price at which you'd be happy paying for them.
Okay.
Rather than what you think they're going to be, what you'd be happy paying for them. So first one I want to talk about, the chat just mentioned a little while ago. He sits at 40-1 odds. He shot 75 on day 1 and then bounced back and finished just outside the top 10. It's Viktor Hovland.
Yeah, Hovland, definitely liking this week. So, looking, where are we here? I mean, I would be okay paying like high 8s for Hovland. Okay. That's where I would be okay paying. I don't think he's going to come in that high though. So,
do you think it becomes an ownership thing? Like if he comes in at 8,300 this week and looks to be chalk, Is that going to be too little? Like, I'm okay, judging by where I had my prices earlier. 9,100 for me and Victor Hovland this week seems like a sweet spot of 10% ownership and probably some pretty good upside.
Yeah, I don't mind paying up if he's up there. I really don't. I really like him. I'll probably even eat the chalk with him if I have to, and just find some swerves elsewhere. That ball striking that we saw over the summer when he was just kind of a lead every week, it looks like it's back. Definitely like that. So I'm absolutely fine if he comes in at 9K. I think he'll be less, but I'd actually almost be happier if he's higher priced, to be honest.
Yeah, I had a question from chat as I'm trying to just give a little maybe extra 60 seconds here to see if salaries will drop just so we can see how close we were. But the key stats to look into for this week, and as we talked about at Sherwood a little bit, we think that there will be a little bit of premium on hitting the fairway, but that's just because of the shortness of the course. In reality, these no-cut events, it's really whoever gets hot with their putter and hits the most greens. Last week, we saw Jason Kokrak lead the field in greens in regulation and lead the field in strokes gained putting. He also had a good approach week where I think he gained over 5 strokes on the approach, so it's not like he was bad. But if I had to iron out 2 stats, it would be somebody that can get hot with their putter and somebody that's hitting a lot of greens right now. That's what it takes to win these no-cuts. Absolutely.
I think you're going to see something, like I said off the top, I think you're going to see something similar at this course we saw last week. And it really was just, you didn't have to be like the best ball striker, but you had to be hitting greens, not give yourself like a ton. Like around the green was actually pretty tough last week. So if you were just hitting the greens and just, making your lag putts and stuff like that and doing bogey avoidance through that, you were fine. You just had to sink your putts. That's what Kokrak did. That's kind of actually how Henley got through too. So, hitting greens and just making putts, it sounds simple.
The recipe for success.
I think it's, I don't want to say easy par 72s, but slightly easier than we see it, say, like Memorial or anything. I think that's pretty much what it's going to be again.
Okay, a couple more and then we'll end it here. I guess they really probably are waiting for Dustin Johnson here.
Yeah, I think they are.
Honestly, just makes sense because he's going to be the first or second highest priced golfer. So honestly, I think it makes sense. I'm okay with waiting. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to look into the value section here, and I'm going to give you 2 or 3 names, and you just tell me the price you hope they are. Sebastian Munoz, it seems like both you and I are in agreement on 90 to 1. Where do you think we get him priced this week? He was at flat 7K last week.
Yeah, flat 7K. I mean, he'll go up a bit, a little bit weaker field. I'll say 76.
76, and that's okay with price for you. You're willing to go in at 76 for Munoz. What's the highest you would put Munoz in your lineup this week for?
Probably like
8.
Probably, yeah, 80 or 8-1, I was going to say, because at that point you can still, you should get a little bit lower ownership. If he's like projecting as chalk at 8-1, that might be a different story. But if he's, not super high owned at that price, I'd be fine.
Okay. Cameron Champ, 6,400 last week, pretty highly owned though, 13 or 14% in the $800. So it led to higher ownership, of course, in the GPPs. You think he gets above 7 this week? And is he still in play above 7?
Yeah, I think if he's low 7s, he's super in play. Look, if he just improves like a little bit. And again, we do have an extra par 5 here, so I'd be okay paying like low 7s. Assuming, again, if he was low 7s and he's like 25% owned, that might be a different story. But I don't think that would be the case if he got into the high 7s. I think people will still be like, oh, well, he didn't finish very well. He's not playing well. And I think there's enough people who just, think like that and don't worry about the scoring aspect of it, that it should keep ownership at least relatively same. If his ownership comes in 15%, I'd pay up to like 7-1 for him.
So if we're doing only raw scoring, if that's what we're relying on this next guy for this week, what's the most we're paying for Spieth?
Yeah, Spieth is interesting too.
I think right at the price he was last week, 7,300, I think is a sweet spot for him. I think if we get him in 50th instead of 38th, we'll maybe just pay off the salary based on his points. And I think that 7,300% is a really good value. If he goes up to 7,800, I think, again, we might be paying a little bit too much for him.
Yeah, it's riskier. I was about to put out the 7,600 threshold too. If he gets over that, you're taking a bigger risk that you really need him to kind of get inside that top, 28 or something like that. So which, who knows at this point. At the same time, I mean, look, it's not like we need that big a jump from him, week to week here. We're just asking for like 20 spots and
remove the doubles and he does it.
Yeah. So I think Spieth will be a better ownership play than Champ. I don't think Spieth will garner as much ownership. So
especially in the single entries and stuff like
yeah.
that. So, all right. Any other golfers off the top of your head that you would say, okay, here's what I want you to look at. If he's under this price, you got to keep an eye out for him.
I would say Paul Casey probably if he's like under 76, 7,700 kind of thing. Even at that price, I don't think he's going to project as super chalk. So like I said, he's in the field 2 weeks in a row. Are you really going to see Paul Casey finish like dead last 2 weeks in a row when he was like T17 at the US Open 3 weeks ago? I just don't think so. So I'd really watch out for that price.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty good call there. And again, of course, we don't have salaries out, but I can tell you we will have salaries by tomorrow. So come back and join Ben Raza and Timothy Frank tomorrow afternoon. 2:30 is when they go off. So the last one that I'll give in terms of a pick that to keep an eye on if they get below a certain price this weekend, I'm going to take so he's so bad at putting on Poa Ben, like you said, Ben Hanan. But if Ben Hanan is below 6,500 this week, I think he turns into a Cameron Champ player like last week.
Yeah,
6,700 on the spot last week. I think if he comes in like 64, 63, I think he's definitely in play this week at that price. Again, keep an eye on that. I don't think he goes that low. But thank you all for coming by and joining us. Again, sorry we didn't have salaries, but we did, I think, the best we could have done with it and gave you what some of our guesses are. And again, I think it really has to do with a unique scenario that we're waiting for Dustin Johnson being one of the better players in the field and having that COVID problem. So on your way out, if you could like and subscribe to our video to make sure we're doing it all right for you guys and you like the information, of course, that we're giving, be a great help. So until next time, everybody, like I said, join Timothy Frank and Ben Raza tomorrow at 2:30 for more of a PGA DFS breakdown and, of course, some salary talk. So until next time, everybody, we thank you all for joining, and we'll see you on the other side. Cheers.